thank you very much for joining us today. Good to get a chance to meet a new faculty. Could you tell us, just to start off, a little bit about yourself, where you come from and how you ended up here?
I actually grew up in the Netherlands. I moved to the United States for 17 years, first to get my PhD at Arizona State, and then I had 2 faculty positions in the United States as well. One at the University of Southern California for 9 years, and then 3 years at Georgetown University. And since May of last year, I'm kind of affiliated with China, I guess. But it took me about 3 months to move over from the US to China. So I arrived in August.
Right, so it's quite an elongated journey due to the pandemic. Did that take longer than expected, or was it smooth?
It was quite uncertain for quite a while because we had no idea about when we would be able to move over. Always kind of talking to different people to see when the opportunity would arise, but then it came and we quickly took advantage of it. But we had to kind of take a detour. We had to fly through Europe in order to be able to come to China because all the flights were booked. We had to get a COVID test, and testing was kind of difficult to do, at least a fast test back then in the United States. So we basically went through the Netherlands, did a test there, and then came to Shanghai. Did
you manage to stop off in your hometown in the Netherlands when you were coming over, or?
Well, so I was thinking about it, and there was this little small time window that I would have been able to pull it off. But because they messed up the test, it kind of took a while because I had to retest, and then the time window kind of shrank. And I didn't want to go visit my parents without knowing absolutely sure that nobody had anything.
Right.
And so eventually that wasn't possible to visit them.
Where exactly is home for you?
My home is actually in a very small town in the Netherlands. It's called Geleen. And before they merged it with 2 other cities, it was about 30,000 people. After the merger, it's still very small. It's about 100,000 people.
So it's like a Chinese village.
It's like a very small Chinese village, yes.
We spent a lot of time in the US. Was that purely for an academic career, or had you went to the US?
All by coincidence. That's how often these things go in life. Serendipity, yeah. To kind of give a background, so I taught a lot of courses already, even as an undergrad. I was working my graduate studies too. I taught a lot of quantitative methods to students and also some financial accounting courses as well. And then I was already thinking about getting a PhD before I graduated on my master's degree from Maastricht University. And then I had this opportunity to become an exchange student, and I went to UC Santa Barbara. It's a beautiful place to go to. And then during Thanksgiving time, I was thinking about, hey, where should I go? And I had this great uncle in Arizona, and I was like, hey, maybe I should go visit my great uncle in Arizona. I talked to him a little bit about, getting a PhD and what that might be like. And then he said, hey, you should really check out Arizona State University since you're here anyways. And so, I did that. And then I emailed with the dean of the business school in the Netherlands and said, hey, I'm kind of interested in going to Arizona State. And he's like, if you're really serious about this, you should talk to this guy. He's going to be here to credit Maastricht University for the AACSB. And so I go back and I'm being interviewed by this person, and this person ended up being the dean of the business school at Arizona State. And he said, hey, you should apply right away. He had a good talk with me. And, already signed this contract with PricewaterhouseCoopers. In fact, I should try that out first, not quite 100% sure yet. But after a couple of months doing auditing work, I realized I like doing teaching a whole lot more than doing audit work. I like research a whole lot more as well. Mm-hmm. And then I applied to Arizona State, and it's the only school that I applied to back then. I had no idea what I was getting into. And so that's how I ended up going to the United States.
So how about your research? Have you always focused on one area, or has that changed as your career has progressed?
It actually changed quite a bit, but eventually it ended up kind of where I started too.
Right.
And so one course that it really interested me and kind of motivated me to apply for a PhD was a labor economics course that I took at UC Santa Barbara actually. And so I was talking to the professor there, was actually ended up being a famous labor economist. And he said, hey, you should really talk to this guy at Stanford, right? And he was Edward Lazier. Ended up being very famous. And I had no idea that he was back in the day. But then I started thinking, well, I'm really an accountant by training, and I really like accounting. And so then I quickly realized that management accounting kind of was the closest thing to labor economics. And so at Arizona State, I kind of focused on those kind of topics. So incentive design and performance management issues with an economics perspective. When I graduated and moved to the University of Southern California, I kind of dabbled around in different areas because to make tenure at a prestigious school, you have to have a lot of publications. And so you kind of work with the people that are there. And so I did some topics related to financial accounting, but then also started working on some management accounting projects too there as well. The nice thing about USC was that it kind of broadened my horizon a little bit because I was working with a really well-known expert in judgment and decision making.
Who was that?
Sarah Bonner. And so she kind of gave me this experience to kind of learn an entirely new set of theories. I got into sociology as well. And so I just kept reading and reading a lot. And so it kind of really broadened my horizon.
Kind of crossover in the disciplines?
Yeah, so like, for instance, we had one paper on why audit committees were very slow with appointing financial experts to the audit committee. And we basically found there's a status story. Accountants aren't simply not the coolest people to hang out with. They don't have the same social networks that CEOs have. And so especially the most prestigious firms were very slow with appointing those because they had prestigious board members.
So that's also social psychology as well then?
Yes, it kind of how I got introduced to that, and I just kept reading and reading.
Do you have any favourite theorists or academics?
Well, I think my favorite person would be someone like Leonardo da Vinci, right? He had so many interests. He was very good at everything, right? He just had this wandering mind, and he just explored and came up with new things that were way beyond his time. And I kind of felt like, it'd be cool to be someone like him, right? So kind of explored these new things and learn more and more and more. That's kind of my personality too. I remember when I was, I think in high school, they do these tests to see, what kind of job should you have later once you grow up, right?
Like Myers-Briggs personality test, something like this.
And I guess I was spot on in my case as a teacher. And so that's also what I ended up doing.
Great. Obviously, you found that teaching was kind of your calling. How did you come to CEIBS? How did the opportunity come about?
The chair of my dissertation committee is also in the faculty at CEIBS, Professor Wang Yuchang.
Yep.
And like 3 years ago, a little more than 3 years ago now, we started talking because my wife is Chinese, and he clearly got the sense that she was missing China, listening a lot to music, a lot of soap operas from China. But she was very enthusiastic, and it was clear that she wanted to spend more time in China. And so I kind of started talking to him as well, also at the time because my brother was in Shanghai. I actually have a twin brother. And I said, okay, well, maybe you can stop by, you're at CEIBS in Shanghai, and say hi. And so we got talking about CEIBS, and then I kept coming back a couple of years. And I realized what an amazing place it is. And I said, okay, well, maybe this is the right thing to do. And so I moved over.
So obviously you had a pre-existing connection with China. How did you meet your wife, and how did that come together? My relationship with China is deeper than that by itself. My mother actually was from Indonesia. She's Chinese Indonesian, and she moved to the Netherlands when she was 4 years old. Because my grandfather from my mom's side, he had a Dutch passport, right? And people from the Netherlands were not so welcome anymore after the Second World War, and so they were encouraged to leave, and so they ended up moving to the Netherlands. So basically I grew up with the Asian part of my family, but I'm going back to my wife. And so we actually met at the University of Southern California, and
back in the day, she wanted to get a PhD, and so she was looking for opportunities to be a research assistant. And she was really working for one of my colleagues back then. And that colleague didn't have anything to do for her, and so she lent her out to me for a couple of weeks. And so that's how we got to know each other, and ever since then I've been working for her.
Wow. Where's she from in China?
She's from Dalian.
Okay.
A lot of good seafood. I've been there a couple of times. It's a beautiful city.
It's one thing to visit China and to have that connection, but obviously to actually move your life over here would be something different. How was that, and how did that feel at first?
So I visited China many times before I moved over, and I also visited Shanghai before, so I kind of knew what I was getting into. I mean, the food is better than what I had in the US. I like Chinese food a lot, and so from that perspective, my life improved a lot. I also have to say that as an academic, you always kind of live in your own academic bubble. CEIBS is a very international school. And clearly the percentage of Asian faces went up quite a bit when I moved to CEIBS, but at the same time, we still have the same language, right? So we all speak English at CEIBS, and we kind of do the same things mostly. And so that part of my life didn't change much, and that's a really big chunk of my life, right? The work that I do at CEIBS. And so for me, the biggest difference was really language, right? And so when you go around, not everybody will understand what you want to say if you say it in English. Although I'm impressed by how much people are able to speak English. It's actually quite good, especially around the CEIBS area. And so that was kind of the biggest thing for me, the language.
How about CEIBS itself? As you said a moment ago, it's a very international institution.
Yep.
Did it match your expectation in that regard?
I think we're actually underselling ourselves. I mean, the more time I spent here, the more I see amazing things. I mean, of course, the collegiality, I think, was very obvious from the beginning. It's a big family, which is definitely not the case at every school. When you look at how the business school is run, it's amazing. It's actually run like a business, right? It's clear, what we were supposed to do, and how that contributes to the school. I think that's something that is great. It's a pleasure to teach the students that we have. I taught already in the MBA program, the FMBA program, the Gamba program. We have very impressive students. I can actually learn something from the executives that I teach, which is it's really nice too. And so, yeah, I think the research support I get is top-notch.
What kind of balance do you have between teaching and research, and how do you feel about that? How do you see that developing?
There have been major changes from when I moved from different places. When I moved to CEIBS, then it's very obvious that the teaching is our main product. We also like good research, especially if those research is helpful in the classroom, and I think what we should be doing in the first place anyways. And now that I'm a full professor, I also have more the flexibility to focus on things that I think are relevant to practice, and that I can also bring into the classroom.
And you recently also took up a new position in the school.
Yes, I became the chair of the finance and accounting department.
Is this an honor, or how does that work?
I've always been a team player, and so when I'm asked to help out, my natural inclination is always to say yes. And
you're here today, so appreciate that very much.
And I like to help out. It's good to see this side of the operations of the school too, right? So you kind of get a better understanding how things fit together. It's all about helping my colleagues, and that's why I'm there. It's not for me. It's to help other people in my department and maybe also the school.
How about outside of school and your personal life? Do you have any interests, hobbies, things you like to do?
My research is my hobby too, and so I don't mind reading stuff about my research. I can do that all the time.
You're a man dedicated to your field.
That way it doesn't always feel like work, which is great. But I also realize I need to work out a little bit now and then, and I always used to play a lot of badminton. And so since I moved to CEIBS, I started to pick it up a little bit again. I played quite a bit before my teaching got heavy. Then I stopped a little bit, and now I'm getting back into the game again.
Have you visited the gym on campus, or?
I have done it at the gym. We also have a badminton club, and they have a site off campus that I go to too.
How about life in Shanghai?
I think Shanghai is maybe the nicest city that I've ever lived in. It's a very dynamic international city, extremely well run. You can find anything you like here from perspective cuisine. A lot of things you can do if you have time.
Is there anywhere in the city you like to go? Anywhere you like to eat? Any favourite spots?
We like the Bund area a lot, and so we have done when it was nice weather, we kind of ride our bikes there quite a bit, which is very nice.
We've seen the typical kind of Dutchman coming out with bikes.
Yes, actually I didn't bike much in the United States, even though it's kind of standard in the Netherlands to always be on a bike. And now that I moved to Shanghai, I'm back on a bike. So
do you ride to work?
I do. We live really close by. It's only a short commute, so it's only a few minutes.
How do you see your career developing, your life in China? Do you have a plan? How do you see the next few years unfolding?
So my plan is to work as much as I can with Chinese companies. My research, I think, is of a lot of value to them, and I can learn a lot about their problems, and maybe can help them solve some of the problems with my tools. I'm already working with quite a few Chinese companies.
Is there any particular sector or kind of company you work with?
I actually work with a wide range, manufacturing, service industries. I think the tools that I study, I can use for any industry.
Could you give like an example of something you do within industry?
I'm not sure I was supposed to mention names, but there's, for instance, one company, they develop lighting systems, and they changed the way the R&D employees are being evaluated. And so it used to be a central R&D department where would be just one evaluation. And now they decentralized some of this evaluation work by getting the business units involved in the evaluation process. We're trying to study there how this change affected people's productivity with respect to research and development, also people's intentions to stay with the firm. I think we found some problems with that revised system, and hopefully we can also help the firm fix the issues that they came up.
So it's there's like a behavioral element.
You usually always start with economics, because economics is a very nice way to simplify things and get a good understanding of what the issues might be from a simple perspective. But then you always have to realize we're dealing with people, and people care about a lot of things, including fairness and pay. And it ends up being in that specific example that was a big issue, and that's why some of the most valued employees are leaving the firm. Not so much because they were getting paid less, they were getting paid more. The pay differences became smaller. And I think that's part of the reason why this was happening at the firm.
So I just want to ask you one question, a more kind of broader philosophical thing. What is the most important thing you've ever learned?
I think to grow as a person, you have to do three things. One, you have to challenge yourself. Two, you have to have perseverance. And three, you have to have humility, right? The bigger risk in life is to not challenge yourself, right? Because then you miss out on things that they could have had a big impact on life. And so it's really important, fundamental to life, to have a full life, that you challenge yourself. You do things because they're hard, not because they're easy. Second is because if you go down the path, a failure is going to happen, and you need to kind of see that as part of the learning process. It is going to be tough, but it's worth it, and it will only make you stronger in the process. Humility, because sometimes I think, especially if you studied issues a lot, you may not listen to people who have other perspectives. You may think you know it. By taking a step back and trying to really understand where somebody's coming from, I think you can learn an awful lot as well.
Has that been something you've learned from personal experience fully, or did you have like a mentor in your career, someone who was influential?
I've had several mentors. I'm very fortunate to have had that. So first was Professor Wang, who's here. Then it was Sarah Bonner at USC. Of course, also other people along the way. I appreciate the mentorship too. But no, I'm back again to working with Professor Wang, and And so I definitely learned some of this from them, but I've also had a lot of my own life experiences where you kind of feel like, you know, this was a setback, but you know, if you really want to get somewhere, then this is part of it.
Been a very interesting chat. Is there anything else you want to say? Do you have a message for the CEIBS community or anything like this?
Well, thank you for having me as part of the community. Yeah, I right away felt as a family member. And it's not only true for people on campus who work here, it's also true for the alums that I have encountered and students as well. So it has been an amazing journey so far. Thank you.
Okay, David, thanks for joining us today. Thanks a lot.